Welcome to the SHENKO Dynasty.
Welcome to the SHENKO Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Kashenko. Today I have Jay Cooper with us, who is an artist and Grammy Award-winning producer. But I want to say that he's a very multidimensional, and it's why I wanted to have a conversation about some of his perspectives, because from my perspective and what I've heard and me getting to know him over the last few months or so, he is interested in so many different things and has the ability to create within different realms. He's working on games and like music and just like building worlds. So I always find those type of creatives really interesting because I think they transcend, and it's something that I can relate to too, where you transcend the specific modality or the specific art form, and you're more so just tapping into the essence of who you are as a creator. And that alone just diversifies your whole creative expression and what materials and tools and structures and forms you can use to express these ideas and concepts you have as a creative. So getting to know him has been really cool and interesting. I hope you enjoy this episode. It's a long one. We had to do this in 2 parts actually. In the first session, it got cut off short because of technical difficulties. And then we didn't record the second part until I want to say at least 2 months later. So there's a lot in there, and when I was listening back to the podcast and editing, I was listening to Jay speak and it was so calming and I was like falling asleep. So this will be a nice experience for you. And I have a special guest here today. His name is Jay Cooper. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Thanks for having me, Kashenko.
You said that really well, because a lot of people, they don't know how to pronounce my name. But you did good.
Well, I'm trying my best. And thanks for having me on your show.
No problems. This is a podcast where I kind of want to talk about creativity and just the soulful aspects of it. So I want to understand your journey into creativity and music. So I'm very excited to talk about all of that with you today.
You too. I'm excited to talk to you about it as well. Get to know you a little better.
Yeah. So my first question, and I kind of start with everyone, I kind of start with this question, is when did you realize you were creative and you knew that this is something that you wanted to do?
Well, the other day I was making a rack to put my audio interface on. It was a shoe rack and it reminded me of building Lego and Bionicle. You know, because came with instructions. It was like an IKEA flat pack star thing.
Yeah.
And it just took me back to when I was making Lego. I loved Lego.
Same.
Yeah. I just got this teenage engineering thingamajig, and it has all the parts of Lego compatible. So I was thinking about making like a stand or like a case or some kind of accessories for it.
That's crazy, actually.
But yeah, making Lego as a kid, and before I made music, I drew comic books. I drew like I don't know if you ever read Captain Underpants books when you were a kid.
Yes, I
Do you
did.
know
I
about
remember
that?
that.
Yeah, Captain Underpants. So they were at school making in the story, they're at school making comic books, like drawing them and photocopying them and selling them at school and stuff.
Hmm.
And that was the wave that I was on. Like before I made music, I basically listened to Justin Timberlake and the Neptunes produced stuff and Timberland and Gwen Stefani and all that at the time. And I drew comics at school.
That's
So
awesome.
that's kind of my early creative outlets is is before I even knew that you could make music. I wasn't really sure how it was made before then. Yeah, what about you? When did you first become creatively conscious?
I feel like when it comes to music, I just always felt really connected to it when I was little, just listening to music. It was very stimulating for me, so I was always just conscious of it. Um,
What
in
kind of
terms
music did you listen to really early on when you were growing up in that time?
so many different things. I think my older brother, he introduced me to like hip hop and R&B, and I used to look up to him so much. Um, so I was listening. The first hip hop song I ever listened to was Gangsta's Paradise. That was my
That's
first
so
intro.
cool.
Yeah. And yeah, but cuz I have a Polish background and
Hmm.
my parents just loved listening to all kinds of music, Polish music, Polish rock kind of music. Um Pink Floyd, like so
Polish
many.
rock. I saw one
Yeah.
of those down at the beach the other day. Really well polished rock. That's really cool though. I want to hear Polish music. I want to hear what that's all about.
Yeah.
Never really gotten into it.
Yeah, I don't nowadays I don't really listen to it. But when I was growing up I did have that even Polish rap as well. That's a thing.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Were your
yeah.
parents into Polish rap? That
M-
sounds
My
really hardcore. I don't know why.
well, especially with the language and the accent, it can come across as like intense.
Very intense. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. No, but it
Yeah,
was most
part of my family lineage goes back to Poland.
really
So it's got to be, it's got to be in me somewhere. I'll
that
listen
is
to Polish rap and I'll just activate.
activates some DNA.
Yeah.
That's that's actually so cool. Do you know much about your Polish heritage or lineage?
I really don't. But on my dad's side, um, he's Polish Canadian,
Hmm.
has Polish Canadian roots, and I went back to Poland in 2019 just to visit for a few days, which was really cool and random. And yeah, it was very cool. It was very awesome.
How did you find the culture? Where did you go specifically?
I went to a place called Łódź,
Hmm.
Poland, and it was just a quick stopover and going downtown to a restaurant for dinner. It was so beautiful that like the weather was just really interesting. It was so foggy. The air there was just like mist in the air and
Hmm.
the mist was just colorful. It was like blue, purple,
Yeah.
and it just felt magical. I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah, that's crazy because so my family is from the Lower Silesia side. I mean, the more recent kind of family history. And it's close to the German border. And I went out because I went to Poland actually 10 years ago, the first time I went. I saw my auntie who lives in Hanover, and I caught a bus from like Poland to Hanover. And I remember just like exactly what you're saying. It was such a like weird experience because I was sitting at like 5 a.m. in this German bus stop area, and my auntie was like an hour late, so I was just sitting there and it was just like foggy and misty, and I'm like, wow, this is a different kind of
Yeah, the
feeling.
mistiness is on another level. I don't know, you really know how to explain it. I maybe you only see it if you're Polish, if you have Polish blood in you. The mist, then just the mist appears and it's got this color to it that only you can see.
Yeah, so I want to learn more about your, I guess, music history. So you kind of
Sure.
started out with Lego and creating comics and art and stuff like that. How
Yeah,
did
that's my
it
origin story. Sorry, go ahead.
how did it transform into like a full-blown music career?
That's a good question. I feel like a lot of my basis in music and what I'm good at as a music producer is similar to Lego in that it's putting the building blocks of music together to create something big and just molding and shaping it that way. So it's a similar kind of process where I work backwards from the building of things. So I'll learn to play guitar if it means I can build a song that has guitar in it. You know what I mean? Rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So I feel like um that's really where my main my main drive for music seems to come from. Yeah, when I was a kid, the first instrument I started was guitar, and I played guitar for a couple years before I started playing drums and just switching it up because I was playing with some friends at school in bands, and in Australia, I was playing with some kids at school in a band, and I was getting really into producing beats for us since I just got the FL Studio crack on my laptop, and I figured out that you can do that at school as well in
Mm,
class. A lot of these things are like procrastination in class, figuring
mm,
out what you can do otherwise. So that's how I got into comics when I was a kid, and that's how I really got into music the hardest because I found out that you can make it on your computer at school. Um, and I went down this rabbit hole of electronic music because I loved the idea that you could, as a kid, like I loved Daft Punk, but I
mm,
didn't really know what that was. Like I didn't understand what techno was.
yeah.
I didn't, well, like, I guess that's to say that I thought it was all techno. And yeah, when I started messing around with making those sounds from scratch and just kind of learning what sounds are made of and how to synthesize things that sound like frequencies that sound like real instruments and that was like my first introduction to electronic music was trying to generate drum samples and generate tones and then arrange them before I realized like, oh yeah, there's this whole history of sequences and keyboards you know, that do this for you. I was doing it just on Audacity,
Mm-hmm.
the first DAW that I made music on.
That's cool. Mine was Logic.
Oh, Logic's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Logic's good. Did you ever make music on GarageBand?
Yeah, I did. But rarely, cause so like when I was probably like 17, cause my dad's really into tech and stuff.
Hmm.
He just has a mind for all that kind of. He's like a architect, and he likes technology too.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was like, I would always, my family knew that I loved music and all of that. And so my dad actually bought me like a mic and Logic Pro, and I installed it, and that's kind of what I've been using since I was young. But in school, actually, I did music tech, and I learned how to use Pro Tools too. But I haven't used Pro Tools since then.
It's forever got that university feeling to it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
you gotta rebel. You gotta rebel and use a different software that they don't teach you in school. That's how I feel about it. That's how you start really getting to it.
yeah. So you were talking about like reverse engineering in a way. So like you have an
Hmm.
idea and then you
Yeah.
reverse engineer the idea. Um, can you talk a bit more about that? Because that's really interesting. I feel like because you were
Yeah.
describing it as like building blocks. How do you
Well,
see all of it?
I was just sort of realizing that a lot of my musical drive and process comes from working backwards working backwards from a finished product, if that makes sense. So, um I guess like when I realized that you can create your own songs, recordings, and everything, like when that clicked for me when I was a kid, I was just like, all right, well, now I just need to make a song to record.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first got into electronic music, it was like, all right, I'm making kick drums and snare drums, and I'm sampling things from records that I like, and I'm just basically making sample packs of crazy sounds that I like,
Mm-hmm.
and then putting them together and realizing that you can completely twist them into a totally different sound and a different loop, and then just making bigger and bigger sample packs of different sounds. Like I was just really into the process of sampling and generating tones and creating loops. And at the time, I was like 14, 15, and I loved playing drums. I played drums all the time at school. And so, yeah, it really translated to, I felt like as the drummer, you're sitting in the middle of all the people in the band, and you kind of have an overview of, you're supposed to have an overview of the whole set and all the songs and all the sections, and you're supposed to cue them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that lends pretty well to producing, because you kind of have an overview of what's happening in a song and all the pieces that are going to come together at what times and how they're going to flow, how you're going to build it up and down. So I feel like that just naturally progressed from being a drummer in bands to putting together songs like that. And making beats is really fun if you're a drummer too, because um, just getting crazy with percussion and using using any sound you can find and trying to twist it into a drum sound is the main thing that got me into producing music and making beats. Basically, trying to make drum sounds out of found recordings and things that aren't drums.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really a philosophy that I try to do in all my music today, is try to make an instrument out of something else that isn't supposed to be that.
That's really cool.
And that's a good place for inspiration when it comes to finding unique sounds for your songs, because I find a lot of people, they want to add unique sounds to their songs, and I start with the unique sounds first and then try to turn them into songs, which helps because you don't have to go looking for a unique sound. You basically just search for unique sounds first to begin with and let that inspire the entire songwriting process. And then, from there, you can bring it home.
Mm. I love that because so what you're saying is so cool because even the way I like to use my voice and vocals, I went through
Hmm.
like a whole process, different stages, just like learning how to use my voice and the different textures and all of that, but then also i- chopping it up and like creating different sounds like you're saying,
Hmm.
so I'm curious if because you sing, so do you actually use your voice to make some of those like instrumentation sounds?
Yeah, for sure. Um, the first the first songs that I released that were electronic in 2011 and 12, I would kind of record my voice into the laptop microphone and then chop it up like that.
Mm,
And at the time, I was listening to Dead Mouse and Skrillex and things like that. Um, and especially Skrillex at the time, he would be chopping his own vocals and things like that. So I just thought that that's how it was done. Um, and it wasn't until a bit later that I realized that I I felt like writing songs was more important because I I love electronic music for the sound and the motion and the movement on it of it, but a big part of me was craving like actual meaning and reason behind the songs and tracks
mhm,
and beats and recordings. Because like a classic song doesn't have to have the craziest, most interesting production. But
facts.
a track that isn't a great song does need to have really amazing, just crazy sounds for it to be interesting. Some music is about the sounds and how crazy and interesting they are. And sometimes that is the song.
Mhm,
Um, and yeah, just really being into pop R&B stuff as a kid made me crave more of a song inside the sort of sonic experimentation that electronic music was bringing. Because there was lots of electronic music that I liked, like Noisia, for example, the drum and bass group. Um, I learned so much about production and sounds and sound design from them, and that was really exciting. And it's like I wanted to apply that to writing songs, like singing songs, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. Because you do have a very unique kind of sound, and I feel like creative identity. So, it takes time to develop something like that. So, when did you feel like things were clicking for you in that regard?
Yeah. Um, when I was 14, 15, I had only ever felt like I was copying other artists. Like before that, when I was playing guitar or writing songs in a band, I always felt like I was copying things I liked. It's just like straight up copies of this and that mixed together. And yeah, when I'm 14, 15, I'm really just making beats on the computer that aren't really that amazing. But I think when I was 16 and 17, I just went through a really emo time, I remember, and which made sense. It was just like, it's just what happens when you're 17, I think.
Yeah, the
And
hormones.
yeah, and it's like, just I had a drive to get better at making beats on the computer. And even though that sounds really stupid now, but so back then that was my way of like that was my diary, was to make beats on the computer. And so like how much can you express yourself making beats on the computer is was the question that consumed me at the time, because I was just looking for something more. I was like, all right, if I heard a drum sample that I already knew about in a song, it just ruined the song for me at the time, because I was like, I don't know, I want to hear something new that I haven't heard before, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really drawn to songs where, you know, every sound felt like it had a real story to it, or a mystery behind it that you had to figure out to work out how it was made or where it came from or who created the sound or something, you know? And sometimes like the source of the sample told part of a story, you know? And looking for the sources of samples made the music really interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
um I found I found Jai Paul's music, and that was one thing that inspired me in that regard, because it felt like every bit of recorded sound in it was um it just felt like it was chosen with passion and fun for the process of recording music in mind, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of part of why I was talking about working backwards, because a lot of these things make sense if you grew up in the 70s and 80s listening to music, because artists back then, they thought like this from the get-go. Like they just, if they were making their own demo recordings like Michael Jackson or Prince or something, they were using analog gear, and a lot of the production process happened outside the gear itself. It happened in their minds because they had a lot of planning to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So lately, since I've been on this kick, just producing with hardware gear and just kind of getting off the computer and exploring with that, it's it's got me thinking a lot about the production process that happens in your mind, like the reason the reason for doing things when you're producing songs. Um, Sometimes when you look at a door, um, there's an expected process for how you're gonna use it. You know you're gonna get to looping patterns and making arrangements like that. But the question is why? Like
Mm.
why am I making a pattern and looping it right now? And yeah, I think like when you go back away from making music on computers, and this is what I mean about working backwards. It's like these are, we as humans, we started making music with our mouths, just speaking, and then we went, through the entire history of music to end up making it on computers. And then
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like, even though I started playing guitar first, I feel like a computer native musician in a way, because a lot of my best stuff was made on the computer, like
Mm-hmm.
as a production and composition experiments. And yeah, it's just now I'm discovering like the opposite direction, going backwards and just learning how to make music in your mind first, your mind as the computer first, and all the songwriting and production decisions, you have to find a real world way of creating that. Like you have to do it yourself with your body, or with a piece of analog gear intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
And really that's just a fun way of thinking about the process of making music. And yeah, I think that's really the summary of my story, is like just having fun with the building blocks process of music, and then getting getting so caught up in those experiments that sometimes like good recordings and good songs actually happen.
Yeah, I feel that. Do you hear do you hear things in your head, or is it more just like you're kind of feeling something and then you're inspired to just see what happens, as you're kind of in your door?
Yeah. Lately, like in the last 5 or 10 years, like I definitely hear it in my head nonstop, like music constantly all day. It's kind of like elevator music in my head, and it's just doing changes in rhythms that I don't really understand yet, but I know it when I hear it. And in my head, it's just a constant elevator background music, and I can't stop it. But before that, maybe like more than 5 years ago, um, and still now, I felt like I was more inspired by images and videos when making music, because I didn't really have any musical language to go from. Um, but what I did have was understanding music through movies and video games and things like that. Video games with great scores. And so a lot of my best memories with music were attached to um attached to how it made you feel when you were watching the movie, and the fact that the movement on screen is, I felt the music, but I saw the movement on screen. I didn't really listen and understand the details of what the music was actually doing when I was growing up watching movies. I felt the feelings and I saw the movement on screen. So a lot of my process coming up with musical ideas was actually just like picturing movie scenes, picturing a movie scene, and then it's like then the music would start playing in my head because of what I was seeing. And yeah, that's kind of why a lot of the way I think about music is color coded or movement coded. Like I think about it in colors and movement because um yeah, I think another one is dance. Dance is a big one because sometimes you get the idea for a song not based on what I'm hearing, but just like the movement that I'm doing, like a walking pace. That's so random. That's kind of like a disco vibe. I feel like is I feel like that's a disco vibe when you're like walking and it's a beautiful day and you're hitting a pace and you're like, that's a song right there. That could be a song. I don't know what the chords are doing or the melody, but just the tempo itself, I get it. But that actually is what I felt at some points. Like there was a song I did back in 2015 where I felt like I got the idea just based on the speed I was walking at, and I was like, "This is it. This is the pace that I like to walk." And then it just went from there. I just made the rest up. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And this is something that I've always felt in my musical journey. Is like I'm an outsider in music because I'm not really a music native. Or at least like that's weird to say since I've made music my whole life, but I've always felt like
Mm.
an outsider to music because I work from the outside in. And I always knew that I was never going to be able to impress people using uh classic music ideas.
Mm.
But I did impress people with the ways that I put it together, the ways that I produced it, the ways that I created the sounds, and um basically just like how I could innovate and think outside the box was really the thing that made my music exciting to me rather than the music itself, you know? Trying to compete or trying to impress people just based off music was never something that I could do, you know? And it's still very much a fake it till you make it sort of thing um because I'm not the greatest player of any instrument, you know? There's people that I know who are the greatest player.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just like I just understood that in music that's not something that, you know, maybe that's not my thing. Maybe I'm not the greatest player of an instrument. So yeah, my strong suit has always been finding finding new ways to innovate the process of making music itself and building new sounds and concepts, conceptual
Mm.
worlds for the music to live in,
Mm.
which is very much how it's always been for me. Like I get inspired to make music because of like a world or a creative universe that I'm making, which really goes back to sort of writing and making comic books when I was a kid. It's a similar thing that motivated me there was the building of that, just the imagining of that concept,
I
you know,
really
making the
love.
characters and the scenes and the story. That's the main thing that really pushes me to make music, I think, is the storyline of it.
Oh, there's okay. There's so much that you said. I feel like I could just ask so many questions because it's so
Please.
interesting. At first, because I do want to get into world building with you, because I think that is super interesting. But first, I want to ask, mm, or just comment on what you said about more so being the visionary and being able to understand how all these different pieces work and creating something in that sense of production, and also highlighting that everyone has different roles to play. Everyone has different
Mm,
gifts. So, you know, you might have someone that's a really elite vocalist, like technically, and just a gift for it. And then there's people more like stylists and stuff who can still convey stories and emotion and all of that through their artwork too, but it's not that one is better than the other. We're all just expressing different things, and I think that's really
mhm,
important to recognize because I feel like there's just so much commentary on like you know, just where music is at right now and the quality of things and all of that. But
mhm,
it's yeah, I just think mm, you find what you like and what you want to focus on and what you're good at and create something with those skills and gifts that you have rather than trying to
mm,
put yourself into categories where of other people and what other people are doing.
mm. Yeah, you definitely have to focus on what you're good at and figure out what that is. That's definitely it. And it's like it's the most cliche thing, but it's about who you are and what it's about who you are and finding exactly that sound that describes it at the end of the day. So it's about figuring it out, figuring out the sound that actually suits your personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people a lot that there's three kinds of music that might all be different genres. Um, music that you like to listen to. Then there's music that other people want to hear you make. And then there's music that you like to make,
Mm-hmm.
or music that you're good at making. Sorry, based on your skills. And those three things might be completely different
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes the music that you listen to isn't what people want to hear you make. Um, and sometimes the music that you're good at making isn't the music that you really listen to a lot, or um, it might just be, yeah, there's that. Those might all be three different genres of music, and sometimes you got to find what the purpose of you making music in that scenario is. Are you making music in that scenario to express yourself? Because in that case, you should make whatever music. Um, well, I was gonna say whatever music you want, but I think if you could make whatever music you want, you might not make the kind of music that expresses yourself the most.
Mm-hmm.
You might just make a genre of music that's just fun to sit down and make for a bit, and it doesn't really get too deep into who you are. So I do find that trying to get to the bottom of who you are musically and artistically is not always the most fun thing, but it definitely feels fulfilling and correct if you do it right, you know? It feels like
Yeah.
it's the right thing to do, even if it's not always the most fun thing because it's hard.
Mm. And you get into some really weird places.
Yeah,
That's what I found for myself, because
absolutely.
what even what you're saying about the music that I listen to, that's like what I resonate with, what I absorb, but that's also what can influence me to create something that's true to me
Mhm.
in something that I can create, but it's not that. Like, I don't have to do those genres or those sounds or whatever, but it's
Mhm.
like it activates something in me to express something
Mm.
that's closer in resonance to my expression. So, yeah, what you were saying was really important.
Yeah,
Um,
hearing other people express themselves like that inspires you to wanna do the same for yourself. So
mhm,
there is a feeling where it's like, um, I don't sound anything like this artist, and I never could. But hearing them express themselves in that way is inspiring because it makes me wanna find that and do that with my own music. So that is a big one. And so you can sort of borrow the energy in a way without
100.
um, even if the techniques or the genre of music doesn't even match. So I get that.
Yeah. And I think that's what people should be looking at it like, rather than trying to, I mean, you can go through processes where you're trying to replicate things, but it's more so to observe and learn, like understand what you can
Mm,
learn from doing that. But
mhm,
it's in order to create something authentic, it really has to come from you, not, and that's going to be, you're going to be inspired by people, and you're going to, sometimes people will hear what you're inspired by, you know, but it's like, don't replicate and copy other people just to latch on to other people's identity, you know?
Mm. Yeah, we all got to start somewhere, and you got to sort of mimic your idols and study it. It's about studying it, you know? So you could record yourself doing a cover of a song that you really like, and that's like that can help you understand why you like it so much.
Mm.
And the next step is kind of like breaking down the process of how they made it, and then you could repeat that process to create other songs that are similar. Um, and then yeah, you kind of learn to walk before you can learn to fly. And learning to fly is basically just being able to express anything you want musically, um, without without those boundaries. So you can kind of have this free fluent language where you don't have to keep referencing things that you've already seen. As long as you have that spark for getting excited when you hear a brand new sound or something that sort of throws you off or excites you because it's different, and focusing on those, because there's different things to focus on when you're creating your own music. Like, you could focus on getting it right. You can make the choices in your song that feel like you're doing it right, or you can make the choices in your music that feel like you're discovering something new because you haven't really done that before or heard it like that. And those are definitely different outlooks
Yeah. But the
for making
space,
music. Yeah.
sorry, I was just gonna say, like, that's the whole process of your creative evolution. It's not, you're not just going to sit in one spot. You have room to kind of explore these different things. Like if you want to focus on being more technical, you can really hone in on that and develop that skill, or just be more like feeling based. What do my emotions want to kind of express right now? So it's
Mm,
you don't have to limit yourself, and I feel like a lot of people just think it has to be one way, but creativity can express itself through so many avenues.
mm. Yeah, not everyone has like uh the insatiability for just pushing themselves to go beyond and discover something different, you know? Some people, that's the reason that they make music. So, first things first, it's like it's this process of discovery and testing, like being in the lab and just trying different things and discovering, what happens when you mix red and blue, you know? And when you do discover something, it's like you're so excited to show everyone, you know? Or you're just excited to be like, look what I discovered. Check it out, you know? And some people are driven to make music for other reasons. Like, for some people, that isn't the main reason that they make music. So, um, when they do create stuff, it 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 can have a different energy about it because their purpose for it isn't necessarily to create new things and get excited by making new sounds. Their purpose for it could be to, like I said, it could be to just get it right. Just do something that they think other people will know sounds right. Or they could be doing it for social reasons. The speaker on it's really bad, but yeah, anyway. I'm having a lot of fun with that. And I got the medieval one too. it's fun, yeah. I mean, being inside the door is like you have so much control, and when I'm really trying to get something done, you need control. You need to just do it how you know, get down to the fine details and get it done. And for a lot of my music making, I was in a space where I'm like, okay, I have to really get it done. And playing with these samplers and hardware gear is just it's harder for me to get it done since I'm still learning. But the the bumps along the way are like opening up whole new ideas of making music and sounds, and that's really the whole point, is to just sort of be able to make music on any piece of electronic gear that resembles a computer or a calculator or anything in between. That's the goal. That's been the goal for me, I think. And yeah, I've been making beats on calculators and things like that.
I wanted to use this part two to talk about more of your experiences in the music industry. So let's, I want to know, what is your general feeling about what's currently going on in the music industry?
That's a broad question. There's a lot of things going on. My my relationship to it is pretty distant. I'm not so much following happening in the music industry, since we're all kind of in an industry of our own when it comes to making music. But I definitely feel a bit jaded about things as far as doing things the normal way. There's a lot of bells and whistles about working in the music industry that I just don't care about at all. And I
Yeah.
try to just avoid them and just make music for the sake of it and release it when I feel like releasing it. And I don't really so much care if it's popular, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I feel the same way too. I think I think especially now with where we are at, just in a worldly sense, there's
Mm.
a lot of shifts happening, and with a lot of things are becoming outdated in the way we think about even navigating our career or what a life could look like for us. So it makes sense that more artists are leaning into their own intuition. And that's what I try to encourage in artists and creatives, is like we all have our own internal navigation system. And when you build a relationship with that, it's going to be a lot more clear in how you can actually create a creative life for yourself and make this a sustainable thing, because you're moving from the source of your heart and passion. So like there's a
Mhm.
difference in the quality of the experience. And that's not to say that like there won't be challenges, because that's challenges are like the initiations of like how you're going to find and discover pathways that work for you.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, totally agree.
yes. So I'm curious, what have been have there been any situations where, or experiences you've had, where you've had to like choose like you've had to consciously choose the path for you, if that makes sense?
Of course, I think a lot lately I'm deciding more realistically if I actually want to do stuff in music. Because my relationship to music is I make it for myself as an artist, as a diary for myself. And I also help a lot of other people make theirs, just as a producer, musician. And I try to help people understand what's their sound and what are they as an artist and how do you produce that with sound? What decisions do you make that may or may not be even related to the music itself? Because
Mhm.
those decisions are everything. And I feel a lot like, for example, when it comes to mixing tracks, right? Um, if you're a major label professional artist, there's an expectation that people have that your music is going to be mixed by an absolute professional and it's going to sound immaculate, right?
Mhm.
But if you're just an independent artist, I don't think listeners really expect your song to be mixed perfectly, for example. I think they expect it to be mixed however you made it. And so sometimes you got to be realistic about what, what makes sense coming from you as an artist.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of things lately that I've just been thinking to myself, you know, do I want to work on this music anymore? As far as collaborations with people go, I feel like I have a lot that I want to do when it comes to making my own music. I spend heaps of time on details in it and building the story of it. And so putting effort into other people's music is usually just an exercise for me to keep my skills sharp and also help people in my life where I can. And I don't always want to do that for everyone that I meet, especially if
Mhm.
it gets in the way of me making my own music. So, yeah, like I was saying, my relationship to my music is I make it, and my relationship to the industry is it comes after. I have certain processes that we have to go through. If you want to use my music for something, um, and the business is the business, and got my menu of things that I can offer. But at the end of the day, that's my relationship to the industry. Is yeah, here's my menu, here's the processes. But with the music, it's separate. Me,
Mhm.
it's me and my music, and then separately from that, it's me and music that music that I'm working on with other people that I'm helping to grow.
So, what is your what is your process in terms of choosing people to collaborate with? Because it sounds like it comes from more of like an intentional and meaningful place. So, what do you look for in people that you want to collaborate with?
Mm. Well, I used to be open to collaborating with everyone because I wanted to develop my skills in producing all kinds of music and just figuring out what it means to work with people on music. And whenever I, yeah, whenever I work on music as collaboration, it because it feels like I'm learning something or I'm growing in some way, or the experience is gonna help me grow in a way. That's one reason why I usually do it. So in the past, I've done a lot of collaboration without a lot of footnotes. Like I was just happy to collab with people. And now as time goes on, I feel more and more urgency to make my own songs. So every time I think about a collaboration with someone, I think, is this gonna get in the way of me making my own music? Because if it's not, then is it something that I want to do? Then okay. And if it usually I choose nowadays to focus on my own music because at this point I feel like I could collaborate with any artist and it would turn out good. I would try new things, try new styles and sounds, and I'd find what makes sense to make with that person. So a lot of the times, like if it doesn't feel like an inner challenge for me, then I might not be interested straight away because I already know that I could work with this artist and we could make amazing stuff. So should I?
Mm.
Or should I focus on my own music since I feel this urgency to do that? So that's a big consideration nowadays. And as far as people that I do choose to collaborate with, it usually just has to come down to is is me as an artist associating with them in a song, like sonically or anything like that? Is it going to make sense for building the story of myself as an artist?
Mm.
And usually, like, if it does, then the other stuff gets thrown out the window. Like, if it is a solid addition to the story that I'm trying to tell in my own music, then I would love to have that collaboration in my music. You know, if it's about someone else's music, then it still might make sense for me to collaborate with that person on their music if that also builds the character and the story that, just the through line of myself as an artist making music.
Mm.
So there's a lot of different things that come into consideration. And a lot of the times it seems like fun. It seems like this artist is trying new things. They have a unique thing going on and they have a similar kind of hunger to express themselves. Like there's just this almost like this desperation or urgency to create music for the purpose of expressing themselves. And usually, those people, if they have that drive and desire to do that, then they've probably already done it a lot. Like they've probably made a lot of songs. They're probably pretty good at doing that. So, those are just a few things that make me excited to work with someone is if they have a really solid idea of what they want to make and when they make it, it just feels right. And they have this urgency to express themselves, which usually makes them pretty good at doing it, you
Mm.
know? So I know that it's going to be two people meeting and doing their thing to express themselves in a way that needs no babysitting. That's the kind of thing that I really like nowadays.
There were so many great points you made, and I want to learn more about what your story is because that ties into world building, but also your own identity. So, who is Jay Cooper as the artist?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of personality splits that go on with people. Like I'm definitely split into multiple personalities and maybe even lives with different things I like to do and create. And music is just one of those things that has its own story as Jay Cooper. And it really just went with I wanted to make I was just interested in sound and making beats as a teenager. And I was also interested in writing songs and playing guitar and things like that. And I spent I spent a fair few years as a teenager making beats and practicing my skills and making electronic music, drawing inspiration from the sound design there. And then starting to sing on my songs was just a way of combining the outputs of writing a song that comes from a person versus creating a track of sound that, represents a vibe. And putting those together is like a subject and a backdrop to me. So it's really just been this, I think a lot of the things that drives me now is that I want to be seen as an artist.
Mm.
So so telling my story a bit more and painting a picture using songwriting is it seems pretty important to me now. As far as the story of myself as an artist goes, like that's where the story is at now. Is I used to be a beat maker when I was a teenager, and as a producer, I've collaborated with a lot of artists, a lot of independent artists, and some pretty major artists. And now I want to be one of those artists, independent or major or underground. I just want to be one of those. And I
Mm.
feel like I am. But it's kind of like when you create a character in a book or a comic or something like that. You just want to see where it goes. Like you created the character. Now you have to see what happens. What happens to the character for the rest of the series? Let's say it's a series that goes on forever. What happens next? And how does the character change?
Mhm.
So as far as like being a songwriter, I think a lot about like all my songs are all very emotional, just complaining about things. I've noticed in a lot of my music. So then I'll be like, okay, well, the character that is across my music, it doesn't have to be sad all the time. So what does it sound like this and like that? And I think that when you use kind of poetic metaphors and things in your music, it becomes part of the world. So I just sort of trace things that I've written about and sung about and build a little map of like what that person who's just in the J. Cooper songs, what have they done so far? Where have they been? And what's the character arc that's being presented? Yeah.
Yeah, because so I've been listening to your project Interim, and what stood out to me was not only the sonics of everything, and it was also just the way everything blended with each other. It was really just like it captured a story and an emotion. So where did you draw from when creating that, and how did you figure out the steps to make it a cohesive body of work? Because it's really beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate that. Um,
No problem.
well, I think about it like this. Things that happen to you in your life, no matter how different they all happen to you. So therefore, they have to be part of the same story. Does that make sense? So the events in your life, no matter what, they have to be part of the same story. So building the story of your life isn't hard because it just happens by itself. Now, with interim, I think I drew a lot of inspiration from my dreams as far as how my dreams are structured. And for a long time, I had this feeling like, there's certain places in my dreams that I keep revisiting throughout my life. And sometimes there's moments where I'm just leaving a hotel room and I'm in the hotel hallway And the hotel hallway, it doesn't really feel like a real hallway. It's like it's nothing. And then when you enter into a room, the room could be anything, could be outdoors. You just entered into an outdoor room. And so a lot of the times in my dreams over the years when I'm going through the file cabinet of my mind and memories, I'll be in this hotel building that keeps morphing and shifting, kind of like Hogwarts or something. So I wanted to I wanted to keep bringing it back to this imagery of a building that, the building's alive and its hallways are through your mind as you're going to access your memories and things like that. And I wanted to express this feeling of starting at the bottom of the building and it's filling up with water. And so you have to climb, you have to rise through the building. And throughout the way, you stumble across lots of different things in the building, good things, bad things. And by the end of the album, I wanted to be at the top of the building, or basically at a part that's so far away from the bottom, so far away from the basement. And up there, it's like you're free, you made it. But it's about finding your way through the building. Because once you get to the top, it's like, well, what do? You can jump off, or you can go back down. What if you're at that place and you're the only one there? You made it to where you wanted to go. So that's kind of what I wanted the album to be about. And I just you just kind of write lyrics about anything you can. And if it makes sense to you at the time and feels good, then I just put it in the song. And then yeah, just the imagery and things like that. I wanted to I wanted to think about spaces in this building to inform what the songs were going to sound like. You know, are you outdoors? Are you indoors? You in the elevator? Who's in the building? You know, who are you meeting along the way? And I wanted to bring in a lot of sounds from my life, like voice memos and a lot of found sounds and recordings from videos and things like that. So I tried to put those things all over the project to give it this sense of like you're moving through this building in your mind at night in your dreams and you're seeing your friends. You're seeing your friends, your family, you're falling in love. Your enemies are there too, you know? So that's the overall theme of the project. I think that sonically it sonically I think it's always gonna work because it's just a thing that the building blocks of sound just put themselves together when the feeling is right, and I can't really explain it sometimes.
Hmm. It's just the process and your intuition through the process.
Yeah. And I think about what songs I've got already and what they mean and what they sound like and how they make me feel. What do I see? And then I try to think like, all right, well, where does the character go next after that? And what about before that? Where did they come from? And you can start threading them together, you know, in an arc that makes sense. And then the last step is figuring out this is the art, this is the arc for the character that makes sense. But what order do you tell the story in? Do you tell the story backwards? Do you tell the story starting at the beginning and then going to the end and then back to the beginning again? Or what's the order that you reveal the character arc in? What colors, shapes, seasons, times of the day? So I think for my next project, I haven't really figured out the actual order of things, but I do roughly know where I am in every song.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to figure out like what's the character arc and what order is the story told in.
Mm-hmm. That is interesting that you brought up your next project because I know that your last album, Interim, was in 2020. So that was
Yeah, it
like
was ages ago.
4 years ago at least.
Yeah.
So how have you evolved since then as a creative person, but also like the difference in what you're listening to and what you're inspired by?
Yeah. Um Definitely been a long way and done a lot of really interesting collabs with people in the last 4 or 5 years. Like I feel like I already found who I wanted to be as an artist and just straining myself to get better at doing that. So it was never really about figuring out who I am as an artist, more just about getting better at doing it. And yeah, I've been thinking of y- there's always a missing piece of magic that you can't predict. And you know, you don't always get to choose what that is and where it comes from. So when I released Interim, I was like, okay, each of these songs it had a magic piece that I managed to find. And that's why I put it there. And now for my new project, I'm still, you know, over the years I've just been thinking like I can't force those magic pieces to come. I just have to wait until they reveal themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that takes ages. I think,
It does.
yeah. I basically, if you focus on making your own music and you do that every day, then some of those magic moments can happen faster because they could just be accidents.
Mm-hmm.
But you have more chances to capture one of those little things. Um, and for me, I've spent a lot of time collaborating with people and working on other people's projects, which I love. And I just wanted to take the time to let let the magic moments come to me and know that if they didn't come yet, then that's okay. Maybe soon. And I also, you know, once you release a lot of your own songs, you finally feel free to say, okay, well, everything I wanted to do in those songs, I just did. So that was that. Now, yeah, I know if that works out for me, then great. But at least now, like, I'll find the answer because I just put out the songs. That's done. So then, yeah, I just went down bit more of a road of focusing on who were the artists I really did want to collaborate with, and then trying my best to do that and just bring. I told the next chapter of my story, and now I need to find my people around me and help them tell their next story of the chapter of their story. Sorry. And I wanted to be a part of some of those stories too. Just a little side character or something, but just show up here and there. And yeah, I just knew that would give me what I needed to get back to my own story when I'm ready.
Mm. That's really cool because you know how people talk about main character energy. It's like
Mm,
you can be in a season where it's like you're really focused in on what you're doing and you being the
mm,
artist. And
mm,
then I really like what you said. You could just be a side character in someone else's story, but it all creates like this network of storylines and narratives that
Mhm.
create a bigger picture of your world. So that's what's
Yeah.
really cool
Yeah.
about collaboration is that you can be really intentional about how you show up in someone else's world.
Mm. Yeah, this whole thing about main character energy and syndrome, whatever, it's like, that's when you think you're the main character in everyone else's story too,
Mm,
you know? And you're the main character in your own story for sure, and you gotta focus on that. But when you show up in other people's stories, you you can't always be the main character in someone else's story too. You're just gonna be a side character, and that's okay.
mhm,
And usually I find that if someone's, you can be your own main character in your own story all day long. And then does that make you happy? Is your story playing out how you want it to go? Or is it frustrating because you feel like your story isn't going the way that you wanted?
mhm,
So sometimes I'm frustrated that my story isn't going the way that I wish it would or could. But then I'll help someone else in their story and it goes really well. And I think like that felt good. Felt like both of us felt like something good happened. And sure, I was a side character in someone else's story, but it felt like it worked out. So that's good. And yeah, I just believe in the energetic karma of trying to help others and maybe they'll help you back.
yeah. Can I ask where that frustration comes from?
Well, I see myself as pretty good, but also garbage at the same time. Just depending on just depending on what's the angle that I'm looking at myself at. So, yes, sometimes I have a lot of opinions about music and being an artist and creating stuff, and I'm trying my best to do it. And then sometimes I'm trying my best to do it, and maybe I'm making progress, but I haven't really got the diamond yet. So then, if I'm if I'm a side character in someone else's story, I know that they're the main character and their opinions matter the most. And so sometimes I'll have this frustration where I think, but but I like my opinion on things.
Okay.
And I have to go do that. I have to go do my thing and put my opinions on things that are mine for sure. But maybe I'm just having a hard time doing that. And so sometimes it is frustrating when you can't say your opinion or you feel like your opinion doesn't have weight when when you're in a different position, knowing that if you went back to your own story, your opinion would be the best one to you. So yeah, it's just a matter of doing your thing when you're in your story, making sure that you do your thing and get it done. And that might take ages,
Mm,
which can cause frustration when other people are sort of moving and they don't think your opinions are good. They,
mm,
and deep down you think, but my opinion is good for me in my story.
mm,
And I really want to prove that to everyone. But I'm taking so long to actually pull it off that I'm not going to be able to convince anyone. And I think that there is something important about convincing everyone that your your story is the right one for you, you know? Maybe that's
Mm.
selfish, but I think it's just about your own self-esteem is you can believe that your story is like as long as you believe that your story is the right one for you, then things are good. But maybe you have to convince people that your story is the right one for you and all of your decisions in it are correct for you as the main character.
Mm.
I'm not really a believer in don't care what other people think. I feel like I care what people think.
Yeah, I've I think it is important to be able to receive feedback and understand how people are receiving things because ultimately that's what's going to help you improve your craft. But especially if we're trying to do creative things and be an artist, like a, a really big aspect of that is being a sovereign being, a sovereign creator that has your own mind, your own
Mm,
intelligence. And like you were saying, you're choosing this story in alignment with you and what you're actually here to express and give to the world. Um and also for your own enjoyment and your own passion. So it's like there's an aspect of it where you need to have authority over your
mm,
art and your
mhm,
craft. You need to have the audacity to make certain
mhm,
decisions and be confident in following that path. Because I find a lot of artists, and this is just humans in general, we have insecurities that stop us from being able to express ourselves authentically and move through the world in a true way to who we are.
mm,
So I think it's a balance of, but I feel like when you're in that state of authority with yourself,
mhm,
you also um receiving feedback from people, it doesn't feel like a heavy thing. I think when you're in more of a fearful and unsure space with yourself, receiving feedback from people can be more of triggering for your insecurities and like, you know? So it's
mm,
like I agree with you. I think it's important to have the courage to like
mm,
um to care about how other people are seeing you and what they think of you. But I
mm,
don't think it should completely destabilize your identity.
mm. Yeah, I think that if it does just destabilize your identity, then you need to work on what
Mm,
your identity is because if you aren't really sure about that, then other people's opinions will destabilize you.
mhm,
Um, and I like the word you use, audacity, because I think that sums up like a lot of how I feel about art in general. Is audacity is such a strong word to describe it because you know when I listen to music and I just experience the artist expressing themselves, if they have no audacity, then they're not saying anything, you know?
mm,
And like your artistry is your audacity to say and express certain things.
mhm,
So you could be like, you could be making a song. Like I have this feeling a lot. I'm making a song and I think, what if I had the audacity to do this or say this, you know? And like the most interesting parts of the song are when the artist has the audacity to XYZ, and when you're helping people make their music, like producing for artists or writing or something, your audacity isn't their audacity. So you might think like, oh, I would have the audacity to say this. And then they might be like, I don't have that audacity.
Yeah, that's not my audacity.
Yeah, that's not my audacity. And it can be frustrating because you're like, but I have the audacity. I would do that in my music.
Mm,
And so it's like, you want to run home and just do it.
that's a good point because in the creative process, collaborating with people, there can be a lot of like conflict or tension when it comes to decision making, like, but being in a collective environment, there's a way you have to learn how to harmonize with people, and goes back to what you were saying before, like understanding the context of like, am I here to serve other people, or are like are people serving me for my intentions and my project? And it's all like interconnected, we're all serving each other, but
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, it's kind of like, what's the team formation? What's the team formation and what position are you playing at that time? That's all. And you can switch positions and you will always be switching positions. And sometimes you're there to run the strategy and sometimes you're there to create the strategy.
mhm. And that's the point with the audacity thing, is like, how you're wired and the things that you're passionate about, and you have your preferences,
Mm,
and everyone has this about them. So like your preferences are going to inform you of a way you can express that audacity. But
mm,
then in a group setting, it's like, okay, we have to analyze what is the best choice
mm,
for the bigger picture. It doesn't become about the individual. It's like it's a state of, you're constantly negotiating, like even the creative choices when you're producing something with someone, like you're constantly negotiating the
mm.
process.
Yeah. Like if I'm producing for an artist who has a really strong opinion about production, then it can be tough. You have to be bureaucratic, maybe is the word. If you're producing for an artist who doesn't have a huge opinion on production and sound, then usually you can suggest them things that they might like because you can just show them what you're good at. But if they have really strong opinions about production and sound, then you're gonna be deliberating on what choices to make, and you have to align your audacities. You got to be like, okay, you're the artist, so you should have the audacity to say what you want to say in moments.
Hmm.
And I won't, as the producer, I'm not going to get it in the way of that. Unless there's a moment on the song for the producer to have the audacity. But that's
Hmm.
only if they want to be one of the main characters. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think it depends on, like, because sometimes it depends on the context, because sometimes you're purely working to create the sounds and the production for the artist, and if they have a
Mm,
very clear vision. But then also, it might be a thing of where, like, you're two artists working together intentionally in the project, and like, so there's more fluidity, or with an artist and a producer, and you're intentionally wanting to create something together, like as a unit, like, it just there's you kind of have to build that intuition to understand the context of, like, what is this collaboration asking of us, asking of me, and is there something where we're doing it together, where we can be more fluid with the ideas, where our egos are working in harmony with each other to bring the best out of the situation versus I'm simply just producing for this artist. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to ask what have, because you've collaborated with Robert Glasper and have won a Grammy.
Yeah.
So talk about that experience because I've been wanting to understand what that was like for you to be, yeah, to just even like experience that.
To just even be around. Yeah, Glass was one of my
Yeah.
all-time favorites, one of my all-time favorite musicians in general. And I first heard his music in high school when my friend Jacques Emery, who's a Sydney musician, put me on. And he would just talk a lot about, like Jacques would just talk a lot about the blend between hip hop and jazz, and hip hop sampling jazz and then jazz sampling hip hop back and things like that, which I thought was pretty interesting because at the time I was doing a lot of sampling. Like I was just taking bits and pieces of sound from anywhere I could and just looking at it, stretching it apart, breaking it down, and just doing technical things with sound. And then when it came time for me to think about artists sampling other artists or becoming the sample in a way that didn't involve technicality but was created on the spot. I don't really know if I'm explaining this right, but that was one thing that sort of it got me into jazz music in general because before that I never even listened to Miles Davis,
Mm.
for example. So that sort of set me down a path, and Glasper was he was just a big inspiration to me because I I knew I wanted guitar, bass, drums, piano, keys on my music. And so I had to learn a little bit of whatever I could. And I just found myself going to like just learning a lot of interesting things about chords and harmony and you know where you sit as a piano player. And at the time when I first went to LA, I was just practicing piano. Like I was writing a few songs because I was adding piano to my songs, and just just happened by chance to meet a producer, Donnie Scantz, who's a legend, and he introduced himself to me, and I played him what I was doing on the piano, and I said I love Robert Glasper. He's super dope, one of my favorites. And he just connected us. He connected me with Jahi Sundance, who is a turntablist in Robert's band, and he makes really awesome music too. And those guys, they taught me they taught me so many things about producing music and being a musician that isn't music related,
Mm.
just philosophy, mindset related. Just certain ways of thinking about stuff and encouraging me to make my music without even telling me how to make music or what music to make,
Mm.
Just everything around the philosophy and the doing of it. Jahi, Donnie, they had a big influence on inspiring me to just get things done and just to know that my skills weren't nothing and that I had to build and work on it, and I could do something. So I'm not really sure why they extended the olive branch in that way, but they really took me in and put me with a lot of amazing artists and said like, this kid is cool, and you got to make music with him. And I was just there like, all right, I'm super down. Hopefully you believe this guy Jahi when he says I'm good, because now I have to be.
Mm.
And yeah, just over the years of working with Jahi on things, he introduced me to Rob, and they just brought me in to work on a few things, like make some drum patterns, do some beat making, and just fun stuff like that. And Jahi and Rob would sort of call on me to be like, Jahi would say, Rob's making a new album. He wants kind of these sounds. Can you make a bunch of beats like that? And I would just spring up and get to it. And I was just lucky enough that some of them were worked on by Rob, and that one of them ended up on his Black Radio 3 album. So really, I'm just catching a stray with that whole Grammy thing, and really, it's just such an honor to work with Rob on his music. I always wanted to work on his music with him, and collaborate in that way. And I'm just, when you're in the presence of a legend, and you're like, you don't even want them to work with you because you're like, why? I'm just so happy hearing you do your thing. Why do you need me to get involved? But yeah, I'm just lucky that um, that I've been a part of that, taken in by Jahi and Donnie, and just, I got to work with so many amazing musicians, and hopefully many more. So
Mhm.
yeah, you know, Rob's a legend, and he's become even more of an idol to me because he's been such a cool person, and he's involved me in a number of things like his festivals, and he's introduced me to his son, who's an amazing beat maker, and inspired me a lot. And yeah, Rob G is just one of the most amazing people, and yeah, I'm just super grateful to work with him, and lucky that we get to tap in together on some music and beats, and just kind of keep it casual and cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, huge life
Yeah.
changer for me.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and I can hear how you light up talking about it.
It kind of feels like one of the major plot points in my life for sure. So
Mm.
whether I like it or not, it changed everything.
Mhm. And so that's really interesting about how you were saying that they were teaching you things that were not related to music. What was like if you can share, what was the biggest takeaway that they taught you in that context?
I think some of the biggest lessons that I've learnt and established in my mind, and I always think back on, one of them is knowing what time it is. Like when you look at the clock, knowing what time it is, but also just knowing where you are in the process, knowing knowing what's the most pressing thing to focus on at whatever stage of the process. Whether it's if you're in a room working with people, you gotta show up and you gotta know what time that is. You gotta know whether it's time for you to sing, whether it's time for you to not sing, whether it's time for you to make beats, whether it's time for you not to make beats. All those things are really important. And I know it seems like a bit of a vague lesson, but it's just I always think like, where are we right now and what time is it? When I show up, what is it time for me to do?
Mhm.
Sometimes you only have a limited time to work with people on things, and you got to be good and quick at understanding what time it is. Let's say you have one session with an artist to collaborate. You have to make a quick decision. What is the song? What song are we going to try to make? Who's going to be singing on it? Who's going to be doing what? And you got to just realize, like, you're not always going to get it right, but what time is it right now? When we're in this
Mhm.
session working on this thing, what do we have to do? What position do I have to play or not play? So that's a big one. Another one is when you're finding your sound as an artist, I like to think about it as, what music are you good at making? What music do you have fun making and you want to make? Because those two things are different sometimes. And the third angle of the triangle is, what does the world want to hear you make? So this stuff is about how you see yourself, but also how the world sees you, finding a balance there. So sometimes the music that people want to make isn't what they're good at making. And sometimes the music that people want to make isn't really what the world wants to hear from them. It might just be kind of a selfish thing that they want to make that music. I find that it's really important to find in the middle of that triangle, what are you actually good at making in terms of musical styles or sounds? What what do you enjoy making? And then what the world wants to hear from you, and find a middle point between those things. There's lots of examples where that could go wrong. And you see it all the time. Like, for example, if I like listening to Future, does that mean the world wants to hear me make songs where I sound like Future? Or is that just not who I am? That's just what I like listening to at the time.
Mhm.
You know, so you could be like, all right, I have a lot of fun when I make music sounding exactly like Future, but I'm not good at it. And the world doesn't really want to hear me do that. So that's an example of where, like, you got one of the points of the triangle, but the other two, they're not really lining up. So you end up making a type of music that's fun for you to do, but you're not really good at it. And the world doesn't really want that from you either. So
Mm.
that's cool. That's just a selfish endeavor for yourself. There's other cases where you might be having a lot of fun making this kind of music and you're really good at it, but the world doesn't want to hear you do it because other people's perception of you doesn't really line up. But you're really good at making that music and you find it fun. So you might surprise people because they don't expect to hear that from you, but you still give it to them that way. And that could be exciting. You got two of the three in the triangle.
Mhm. With the last example that you gave, I think this is the thing about being a creative. It's like, I believe if we follow our passion and we do things that genuinely excite us, there's always going to be people to receive it. And you kind of have to take your ego out of
Yeah,
take your
in a
ego
way, you do have to take your ego out of it, or you got to take it into account.
because it's like you might have this idea of a lot of us have been wired to want fame. Not everyone, but like culturally speaking, what's going on in the world, it's like we're
Yeah,
oriented to want to be visible and have fame and stuff like that. So it's like we place this expectation of what receptivity should look like, because if it's not on this really big scale, then it doesn't mean anything. But that's not true.
yeah,
You have to understand that you have a gift that you're sharing here with the world. And like naturally, because you exist, there are going to be people that receive you and need what you do and seek what you do, just like you seek other people in their service and in whatever realm that is. So it's the same thing with music. and being an artist, there are going to be people that receive you, but you have to understand, like, it doesn't have to look like this big global superstardom. You need to be honest with yourself about what your path actually is, what you're here to do, So it's like, this is where we have to like refine our ego a little bit and not place expectations on the outcomes, but more so focus on like being in your authenticity, expressing yourself, and then you're gonna, through that process, find the pathways and the ways that people that are meant to receive you will receive you.
That's right. Like, I think that fame is about attention, and attention isn't about being good or doing the right thing. It's not about succeeding. It's about attention, and the way to grab attention is by pissing people off, annoying people, getting in everyone's face and throwing a wrench into the machine, confusing people. That stuff is how you get attention. So basically, like, there's a lot of people who get attention because they're doing something that's really weird, attention grabbing.
Provocative.
Yeah, it's provocative. Maybe it's annoying. It's really just, it makes people angry when they see it. And you can really milk that and use it to your advantage if that's what you're looking for. Some people just have a desire to be understood rather than to get a lot of attention for things. So if you feel like you're being understood in the way that you want by the people that you want to understand you, then that's great. That's really good. Do you need everyone in the world to like you or know about you? Maybe not. Maybe you just want to be understood by the people that you want to be understood by. That's it.
Yeah.
And yeah, the trifecta of, let's say you got the trifecta of, you're good at making this kind of music, you enjoy making and listening to that kind of music, and when the world looks at you, it's the kind of music that they want you to make. Then what you have in that situation is something that is right within you. You feel right when you do it. And also the world enjoys you doing it and accepts you for that. So that's why I feel like that's the trifecta of finding your sound. And what that is could be a completely niche thing that not many people like. But
Yeah.
but the people that do like it, they'll at least know that you're being yourself, you're enjoying that, and you're good at doing it. And yeah, I think that's important for trying to express yourself and be understood.
I want to go back to what you were saying before about attention and visibility. I think for the most part it's pretty distorted, like about people's relationship with fame and
Hmm.
visibility. But I think I see a world where it just becomes a byproduct of people being in their true service and authenticity, rather than it being this like thing that people are chasing um because of just their need for validation and all of that driving them. I'm noticing more people stepping into their service. Because as creative people, we are in service as well. It's not just like, I think at the core of it, we're simply expressing ourselves and we have this passion for music. or whatever modality it is. But that is also a service to humanity, like you being in your authenticity. So naturally, when people see who you are and they know it's coming from a real place, that's going to amplify your visibility. So I think there's going to be more people stepping into this fame and visibility that actually are taking responsibility of what it means to be in that kind of position. I think with social media and just a lot of the kind of belief systems that we have in the world about that we've adopted in our culture and society, that has really distorted our relationship to a lot of things. But I think like a sense of like balancing is going to happen. So it's like that's why artists like yourself are important. Um, you being passionate about exploring creativity and who you are in the process and not being caught up in like the politics of the music industry and stuff like that. That more people like you in that space is what's going to help affect the change that we're all desiring, because we know there's a fundamental problem like with just how the music industry is set up, and a lot of systems in this world are set up. So it sounds like a very vague, intangible thing, but every action that you take going toward your sovereign self to be the authority of your life and your creation and your creative abilities, that has an energetic effect for people to use that as a reference as how they can become that. So I'm very excited to see how this shift is going to happen, because there's a lot of things that aren't working anymore. And you get to choose the life that you can live now, especially as a creative, even though there's going to be challenges in that process. Like we have to figure this out. Really, we have to we just have to be strong and like figure this out, because we're not only setting ourselves up, but future creatives, like our children and the future generations, hundreds of years down the line, like you being authentic, you following your heart is what's gonna set up the rest of humanity.
Yeah. It's a big ask. I mean, I really believe that this might be controversial, but I just think that artists shouldn't expect to make a living off their art at all. They just shouldn't expect it. They should just do it anyway, you know?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because making a living off something and making money off something is basically just being able to convince people to buy you stuff or to give you money, because what you're giving them in return is just simply something that they want more than money.
Mm.
What you're offering to them is something that they are willing to pay some money for. You know? They say, like, I want this money less than I want what you're giving me. So that means you have to think about whether your art is valuable to people in the first place if you want to make money off of it. because you don't deserve money just for making art or being an artist, you know? So, like, deserving to make a living off your art is, you know, you only deserve to make a living off your art if you can convince enough people to pay you money for in exchange for you doing your art. That's just a simple math problem. And if if you haven't found a way to make people or to even give people the opportunity to pay you to continue doing your art, then are you going to quit your art or are you just going to do it anyway?
Hmm.
Is the question. And I think it is really hard to, like, I feel like it's hard to commission art from people before they've made the art because you don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know what the art's going to be. You might be an artist who has created so many things that people enjoy, that people might just want to see what you do next. You know, so maybe someone commissions a piece of art from you and they don't even care if they like it or not, if it's good or bad, because what they're excited for is to see what you do next in the story. Maybe you haven't made a lot of art before in the past, so they don't even know what they're going to get. They don't know if it's going to be good or bad, and maybe they don't care about your story. It can sometimes be hard for people to give you money for that if they don't know if they're going to like it already. And they don't really care what happens next in your story as an artist. So I say all this to say, you should want to make art to not to make money because you never know if it's going to even come. So if you're going to let that stop you from making art, then please let it. And if you do want to make a living off music or make money off music or art, then you do have to wrestle with the thought of what is my art even giving to people in terms of value that would make it something worth paying for. And some of those things aren't in our control. Like a lot of artists have gripes with Spotify and Apple Music, and I'm not a fan of Spotify for the most part either. But at the same time, they're presenting an opportunity for you to broadcast your music to the world. And there's a number of things that come with that. If, you know, if they're basically keeping all the power and money to themselves, then it's because they can. They have the upper hand. And they can because people will still buy Spotify Premium and they'll still upload their music to Spotify.
Mm.
And as long as they will do that, then Spotify has the upper hand and they're going to take the upper hand, you know?
Yeah. And that brings a point of like creating things and making choices to be a part of things that align with us. So I see in the future more systems in the industry or platforms that are truly supportive of creative people and getting creatives paid and
Mm,
increasing the quality of life. That's also a part of what I feel like I'm here to do, and I have thoughts about how I'm going to do that.
mm,
I'm not going to go into detail just yet because I feel like it's something that I'm uncovering as I go
mm, mm,
over time. Um, as I go with time, there'll be more information and how I can do it.
mm,
But I think we really it's possible. I think we only have an example of what life has been like for artists because we've seen it. Like we've seen the references.
mm,
And a lot of it is around suffering. Like
Mm.
a lot of artists are just attaching to this narrative that we have to suffer, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be like that. So I'm personally
Yeah.
choosing to be a part of creating things that benefit artists truly. And
Mhm.
I think it's absolutely possible.
Mm.
I just have this vision of a future where creative people don't have to worry about money. They have all
Yeah.
their basic needs met and they can just create. And it is totally possible. We just have to do the work. We have to do the inner work and start just dissolving our belief system.
Yeah. I was kind of thinking like, a world where artists don't have to rely on money would be cool. But what if that artist isn't doing anything that would warrant that other people to give them money? What if people don't give you money as an artist, it means they either are getting already what they need from you as an artist without paying. So why pay? Or it's because they don't they don't want to give you money. So like a world where artists can, yeah, I think about suffering as an artist and in music in a way where if you feel like you have to, like if you feel like not having money is suffering, then get a job
Yeah.
and try to and try to get money so that you're not suffering. And then when
Mm.
you make music after work, you might have fun again. You might enjoy it again, you know? So like if you feel like being a full-time artist is hard because you're not making enough money and you feel like you're suffering and that's how it's supposed to be, then I don't think so. You just have to rethink things. You need to, if not having money is making you suffer, then you need to focus more on that. And then
Mm.
make music in the times where you can, or be an artist when you can. And that's okay. And I think that as far as making a living as artists, like I said, you have to find people who are willing to give you money for what you do. And if no one's willing to give you money, no matter how hard you try for you creating your art, then you really do have to reflect and think, how is me being an artist valuable to people enough for them to give me money? Is it? Or is that just something that I really want? Like, I really want to have no financial um, responsibilities. I want everyone to give me money for me to make art, and I don't even want them to care what the art is. To me, that kind of sounds crazy because just it involves forcing people to give you money for something that, well, it doesn't involve forcing people, but you need to make money from people who are giving it to you because they want to. And if you want them to give you money for your art, maybe you do have to think, is my art giving something of value back to them? Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't.
And what I was going to say to that, also another point of view is like it's also your belief system that is going to affect just what you're attracting. That's more of
Mm,
like an energetic thing, but it's a very real thing. Like the more value you see in yourself and the more you dissolve your belief systems that kind of limit or diminish how you view yourself, diminish how you view your art, that is all like energetically reflected into what you're expressing. So people can feel that. So like energetically people aren't going to care because you're you're having like a limited belief about yourself and your ability to make money off your art. So I think that's like the core is just going through your belief systems and at any time that you feel an insecurity or something come up around like money or your ability to receive, um, that's something to work on, because I think naturally when you're really in that alignment, um, people will find value because you're creating something that is I don't know how to explain it, like that is valuable. But I also think like in a practical sense, this is why world building is really important, because it's not just like you creating and expressing for the sake of it. World building comes from you and your intelligence and your awareness of yourself. But you can curate an experience for people to insert themselves into. So it's like this is a practical way that you can create magnetism. Is like, how can I create experiences that will excite other people, not only me, but other people?
Yeah.
And that is like when we listen to music, when we go see a movie, we are there for the experience, and that contains your essence, and experiences help you connect to this collective thing that we're all experiencing, helps you connect to your
Mm,
soul. So it's like, how am what I doing how does what I'm doing excite me, but how can I translate that excitement so other people can feel that too?
mm,
So
mm,
that's what world building is. You get to create facets of your world, and there's different layers of it into how to get people to connect with themselves, because we're all
mm,
searching for ourselves in the music. We're searching for ourselves. Like, that's why we resonate with certain pieces of music more than others. Like, because we can feel something pulling on our energy or our emotions, because we can feel ourselves in it, you know? Even
mm,
if, because sometimes we can experience something that we don't necessarily relate to, but there is a magnetism behind it that's pulling us to be curious about it. So, like, world building is so huge and
mm, mm.
important to
Being
it's
creative in
like,
any way, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Because I think about, I talk to a lot of artists and creatives, and one major thing I always go back to when they talk about certain things they want to do, sometimes I just say, why do you want to do that? Why? Like, just think to yourself, why?
Mm,
Sometimes, like, you can't even answer it. Sometimes sometimes there is no reason why, but not in a good way.
mhm,
And yeah, like, when you create stuff, there's certain choices and decisions you make in the creation of that thing. And then there's a whole technical process that you go through to actually build it. But why?
mm,
Like, if you can use any technical process and you know all these different technical processes, why do you choose this one? Why do you choose that one? And why are you even making something in the first place? That's just something that I think is really important for people to think about first before you got to play around and prototype. And then when it comes to actually doing something, just make sure you know why.
mm. There's an intention behind it. You know what that made me
Mm,
think of? I was it was probably like a couple of years ago. I was in the lounge room with my mom and dad, and we were watching just these random clips of like people inventing like technology and like different robots and like AI type stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember there was this one guy who had like this huge ass.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this weird bike, but it was huge, like on a big um like one wheel type thing. Like yeah. I was like, I just started laughing at it, and I'm like, the comment I made out loud was like, what's the point of doing that? And then my dad was like, well, it's important for people to just create things. Well, I'm kind of just like paraphrasing it because I don't remember the exact words, but he was saying like it's important for people to create things because then other people can understand how to use that information to innovate things. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
I think like a really
Yeah, there is
important
an
part
interplay
of
back and forth.
yeah, it's important to allow yourself to deviate and just allow yourself to create random things that don't make sense because
Yeah,
like
absolutely, absolutely.
within those spaces like you're gonna get more information about
Mm,
how you're gonna make things work for when you're in, like you were saying, the intention behind like a project or the
mm,
intention of like more information about your creative identity, things like this. So explore those random tangents that you go down on, but it's also important to have that intuition to know like, okay, let me realign myself with what my intention is and like what I'm trying to share with the world,
mm,
because like we were saying before, that's the value of it. Like I'm getting what I need out of the experience and other people can receive that.
mm, mm. Yeah, you definitely have to mess around and play around with things, because that guy who made the massive bike, he might just be thinking like this. He might just be thinking like, I want to make the biggest bike that anyone's ever seen. I'm passionate about the size of bikes and I have the audacity to make the biggest bike,
I'm
you
dead.
know? And then he could be making a big bike and someone says like, why are you doing that? He'll be able to turn to them and say, I want to see what the biggest bike I can make is. And and I won't stop until I've made the biggest bike I can, you know? So like that question of why is he doing that is like it's up to him and it's something that he might know
Mm.
deep down, even if no one understands why he's making a bike. His why is like, I just want to see if I can make the biggest bike. And that's a good reason. That's a good reason for why. Because sometimes you're creating stuff and you're throwing things at the wall, and it's like, why? Because I'm trying to figure it out.
Mm.
That's why. That's why I'm creating this. Because I'm trying to try stuff so I can figure it out. That's why. Right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that made me think about like how even as artists, you know how there are some artists that innovative in nature. So it's like a lot of the time things won't make sense to like mass collective. Because it might be ahead of its time or it's just like, not what's typically resonant at the
Yeah.
time. So that might be you as an artist, like understanding your position, like your role in the world. I'm here innovating things, but people who are other artists, they might come across my art and they use what I've expressed and they can find themselves in it and expand on what that frequency is, So it's like
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, just taking away, like we were saying before, the expectation of the outcome and like you having your own personal intention and drive to create what you're creating because you never know who it's going to influence or how it's going to be received in the future. And I know, especially in my journey, I've always felt very different, just in terms of like even how I navigate things, like this vision that I have. Um, that can make you feel really isolated sometimes. But if you're someone that knows innovating something new and different and helping to shape and shift culture in certain ways,
Mm-hmm.
um, you you're sometimes you're going to be creating things that are way ahead of what the collective is ready for. So even
Mm-hmm.
a part of, another way that that can manifest, like how we were talking about money or like being received by people, you that is like an initiation process as well, where like despite whatever's going on, how I'm not being received, I'm being asked to be to be devoted to my path and my expression. And at some point, people might meet me with and might be able to see me and I can be understood, but
Mm.
that is a process in itself. That's what it's been like for me. I feel like now I'm tapping into that space where it's like I'm meeting more people who see me, who understand my energy. So, but I've done a lot of work to dissolve my insecurities, like because I've felt very undermined or like um people wouldn't take me seriously or whatever. But it's like there's a process of developing yourself and being
Mm.
initiated into different things so that when it's time to show up, you show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. When it's time to show up, that's exactly right. Like, there's a difference between when you're just in the lab and you're just trying stuff versus when it's time to show up and do the thing.
Mm.
And yeah, and another lesson that I took to heart was when you show up and do the thing, you just got to do it. You just got to go for it
Yeah.
because you're there for a reason to begin with. And overthinking things in that time isn't going to help you. You just got to do it. You just got to, if you're an artist, you doing your art is the art. So that's all you got to do. Yeah, like another thing is kind of like if you're really an artist, you shouldn't even really have to try that hard to get the vibe. You might try really hard to put effort and energy into the technicalities of things and creating things, but like the actual art itself, it should just be automatic. It should just be happening naturally as you move through life since you're an artist.
That's interesting because for me, I've always known what the frequency of my sound is like.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been the process of being able to translate that in a way that I feel is like reflective, truly reflective
Mm-hmm.
of like what it
Yeah.
is. So
Yeah, that's
like,
like the technical side of things where you actually put effort into honing your skills, right?
mm,
But the
mm,
art itself, it's like it's right there inside you from the start.
yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Because we all, I feel like we all have this inner vision. Sometimes people aren't connected with it for whatever reason, but we all have this source energy and source vision inside of us. So like the more we connect to it, I feel like, and take actions that allow us to translate this thing, learn how to communicate it, whether it's like verbally or through singing or through
Mm,
production. Like that's a process of your physical body being the vessel in how to translate the textures of what that is. So you have to build a relationship with vision and the dream, you know?
mm. Staying true. Staying true to your vision.
Staying true to your vision.
Putting in the work that you need to do. Knowing
Yeah.
that the vision was always true.
um, I want to talk about Future now because you got a placement with Future on his last album. How
Yeah.
did you even find out about that? Was it like you
Well, it was a bit
just
of a
heard
surprise.
that? Yeah.
It's a bit of a surprise. I got an Instagram DM from someone in his management team saying, "Where can we contact you to send, forms to sign about your song being sampled on a future song?" And I was just thinking, like, okay, anyone can just make this up and say it.
Hmm.
But he did tell me the name of my song that was sampled, and he told me the producers on the song. And one of the producers is someone that I met and worked with in Toronto called Nino a few years ago. And yeah, we worked on some tunes, and I played him all my stuff. And yeah, a few years later, one of my songs that he had sampled on a beat ended up on the Future album. So they just got in contact with me over Instagram and said, "Yeah, it comes out tomorrow. Where can we send the forms?" And I was like, "All right,
It comes out
let's
tomorrow.
see." Yeah, I did a bit of thinking and I called some friends and I said, "I just heard a rumor that I'm on the Future album, but I don't know what I'm going to do on it, and I don't know if it's true. But how funny would it be if it was true?" And then yeah, the next day I heard the song and I was like, "Yeah, I'm singing. I'm singing on the outro of the album." And that was really cool because that experience has taught me a lot about what I want to do in music and what could be successful, what could be a successful thing to do. And it clarified a lot of things to do with just knowing that I like making the music that I want to make and I really enjoy that and getting the ability to express myself completely how I want to be expressed as an artist, and that's still being valuable down the line to other people when it comes to them expressing themselves. Like Future, he could
Mhm.
sample my song and he could do his thing on top of it. And that was how he expressed himself. And for that, I didn't have to compromise how I wanted to express myself to begin with because it was my song.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just think that's the best. Yeah, one of the best ways to do that because both of us didn't have to compromise. We just did our thing, and both versions exist for different reasons to different people. And I think that's awesome. So yeah, it just made me realize like, oh, I don't have to be one of the loop guys making loops, sending it to six other people to add stuff to the loops to
Yeah.
eventually get, I hear a lot about the game of making beats and getting placements. And I never wanted to be part of that game and competing because I wanted to just be an artist and express myself. So knowing that you can be an artist and express yourself however you want, and you still get to be on the Future album, kind of like loop producers want to be. and you didn't even really have to compromise. So
Mm.
yeah, that taught me a lot, and definitely sparked a lot of things that I want to do now, which is just make new songs, release a lot of new songs, and just know that I can do what I want with them. I can make them sound however I want. Really do my thing. And if it gets 100 streams online, maybe 5 years later it could get 1 million people listening. And you
Yeah.
never know. So, I just there's times when I tried my best to compromise and meet people where they want me to be, and it didn't even work out. And this was a time where I just did my thing and it worked out. So, makes me think that I can just make the music I want to make and just release songs as an artist, and like maybe only 100 people will listen to my song, but a few years down the line it could be really interesting, useful, valuable to someone else. And that could be transformed into something that millions of people get to enjoy. So yeah, that kind of how I feel about the future ASA gang placement, where one of my songs turned up at the end of the album, and in a sample it was me playing keys, my drum programming, me singing my lyrics, playing guitar. It had all of that in the sample, and it had some of my friends. It had some backing vocalists. So I felt like when I made that song, I wanted to put all these different things in my life and original sounds and sounds from my friends and stuff. And yeah, it just reminded me that if someone like they sampled like 30 seconds of my song, but it had so much in it. So that was
Yeah.
really cool. And definitely
Yeah, and
inspired me because it it made me feel vindicated from putting all that effort and detail in my own music, knowing that it just made the sample even more rich with rich with vibes.
yeah. And that song is really beautiful, like just the textures, the
Thank
emotion
you.
of it.
Thank you.
So, yeah, yeah. So it's pretty cool that someone took it and reinterpreted it through like what they were trying
Mm.
to do. And that was Future. So
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest artists ever. And it was my first Billboard placement
oh,
in the top 20, I think it
congratulations.
was. I think it was a number one album at the time. And yeah, it just felt really good. I'm keen to make this next album, and I love some of the tunes that we're working on, you and me,
Oh
for
yeah.
this new album. And yeah, I'm
Yes.
just excited knowing that these songs could do anything. They could have a life of their own.
Yeah.
Now, I might not always be able to know or decide, but yeah, we're gonna still create these songs. We're gonna put them out there, and if nothing happens, I'll be happy that I did it.
Yeah.
And maybe a few people will enjoy the music too. But if something happens, it could be a collaboration with one of the biggest artists ever.
I'm so excited to be in that process with you. So I appreciate that you even considered me. So
I love it. Like, you just have been sending vocals and they've just been perfect. Like, absolutely nailed the vibe. Love the sound. It inspired
yeah,
me. I was like, this is coming together. Like, there's a sound coming together. And she gets it. So yeah,
yes, yes.
rare.
I've always loved like vocal production and arrangements stuff like that. So I think it comes naturally to me. But something that I've been wanting to do is actually um help an artist in their process because I don't feel like I've had the proper opportunity to go into that. So like, you know,
Mm.
at whatever capacity it ends up happening between me and you on your project, like I'm just very excited to even work with someone that's as talented as you because yeah.
Thank you. That's so nice. And
Yeah,
likewise,
very.
like when people lend their talents to helping my music, helping my songs, it's like it blows my mind. And I'm so grateful that people would even, because it's like you inject energy into a little song, and the song is like it's being grown. It's like being born. You
Yes.
know, you see someone's song and it's like coming together. And you're like, wow, look at that little thing. And you just look at it in the magnifying glass and you do some calculations and you give it some energy and you go like, all right, cool. I helped. I helped make this song, create this song.
Yeah. I can't wait. Wait, I just remembered I really love the 1-800 Nightcrawler project.
Yeah.
What was that process like collabing with Solo and like creating the
Hmm.
sound for that? And how is that a part of, because it's like kind of like a side thing to your main world.
Mm.
How does that connect?
Well, working with Solo has been a pretty interesting journey because we met when I was just a kid and he was in Justice Crew and we just crossed paths when I was pretty young and we met up again in like 2019 when I first became hip to his music and he just had so much praise for my songs and he was just really excited about my music in a way that I thought was really cool. I was like, "Oh, he gets it and he thinks it's cool. He wants me to continue." And yeah, like I felt like I felt like over time I could hear the influence in his music and he was making beats and songs and all of a sudden I was hearing them like, "What? This is so good. This is like I wish I made this." And then, you know, his drive and his ethic to keep on creating songs and just ideas, pumping them out. It totally overtook mine since I was in a place where I was thinking so hard about what to make and why. You know, I wasn't experimenting. Well, I was experimenting a lot, but I wasn't locked in on something. And at the time, he was just cranking out these amazing demos, and they were all sounding like, "Damn, I wish I made that." Like, why why didn't I just make that? I've been thinking about this next thing for me and what new skills to learn and new stories to tell that I wasn't just cranking out what I knew I could do and what I was good at. But he was, and I felt this kind of envy that you have with friends where you're like, oh, you know, this competitive friendship. So, you know, I rock up and he'd show me these ideas and I'd be like, oh, let me hop on this one. Let me write a verse. I'll do some beats on this. And so like I was driven to just help some of these songs that he was creating and collaborate on it. And we had fun like he showed me these cool camera lenses he was trying and styles of shooting and editing videos and that was really inspiring me too. So I was, you know, we would run around at night like filming stuff and taking pictures in the dark and things like that. And that's how we came up with Nightcrawler because we were thinking about that Jake Gyllenhaal movie where he's running around at night filming crimes and things like that. And I think that in our songs like a story just started to develop and we just started calling it a thing. And his brother was actually making, you know, some designs, some artworks for him and graphics, and we started thinking like, how can we all make something together? And his brother, who goes by Art by Somewhere, he started making these comic book concepts based on the songs we were making, and I was just like, I was blown away at the idea, and I loved it. And I always have been interested in comics and been a comic artist myself since before I made music. And so like then I was driven to think like, well, if there's gonna be a comic, like I gotta make it good. I gotta help somehow. So we just all started collaborating on these graphics and designs and putting together a comic, and that started making us like decode the lyrics and think like, what could the story be about if it was if it was like an action mystery comic or something. So that's kind of like the back and forth between building the visual world and then working on the sounds and trying to create the music too. Like they just fed each other into this vibe, and we just called it 1-800 Nightcrawler so that we could have a title. But I really like the vibe, and honestly, we still have comics to make, and we gotta release more chapters of the music and keep it going. So I'm pretty excited. And Solo, he's always been a big mentor for me and just a big bro. And yeah, he's taught me a lot about music and made me reflect on my sound, since sometimes he's been like a mirror to me. Like he'll reflect back parts of my sound that I'm like, oh yeah, nah, he's right. He just reminded me that like what we're even doing and why we're here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I learned about you through solo, and it was years ago. Like, because there was a point Solo and I were living together in a shared house with other people, and he
Mhm.
was showing me your music. And he was like, "This guy is like different, like someone coming from Australia, like making this kind of music crazy. Like he's ahead of." He always said just really nice things about you and how you're just an innovator, like the way you think about music. So I know there's a lot that he's learned
Mm.
from just by through what he's shared with me. So yeah, like, and I also understand the what you said about like he reflects the music, like he reflects your own sound back to you. There was when I listened to his music, it activated something in me where it felt familiar. I'm like, this is keys to like my sound and like what I like. You know,
Mm.
it just made sense in a different way. So I understand what you mean.
That's why he's so good at what he does, because it's like being inspired by other people is one thing, but actually going to do it is totally different. So if you're inspired by like Justin Timberlake, let's say, like okay, but can you use what you're inspired by about Justin to like make good stuff for yourself? Or do you just really like Justin Timberlake's music and that's inspiring to you? You know, and I feel like when I first heard his music, it was already really good. Like it was already awesome, and he had his own sound. And there were certain things what like after I met him, there were certain things where he was reflecting things in my music back to me. And I was thinking like, that's so cool, because I really feel like I've actually inspired someone, and they're not just copying me. They're actually by my side, like paving the way with me, you know?
Mm,
So that's
that's
one thing I'll always
beautiful.
be grateful for. It's like, oh nah, he's on my level with it as far as what we're trying to do and what we're trying to create. And he's right there next to me, and we're both innovating.
That is really beautiful. to even just be able to experience that with another creative, and especially just working on. You guys made a really dope project, so I can't wait to see what Jay and Solo end up creating together. Like
Yeah,
yeah,
should
it's
be good.
so
I'm
cool.
really excited for some new stuff we got. Yeah, I think what I gotta do is I gotta make my album, and it's coming together, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to release some new songs as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm trying to, you know how you said you want to be known as an artist? I've
Yeah.
always identified with an artist, but there's been so many things, like so many experiences I've had to have in that process that had nothing to do with being an artist. But
Mm,
now I feel that urgency or that like call to really work on my own project. So
mm.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel
I
that too.
und- I, I understand what you mean.
Yeah, you gotta go for it. It comes on and off because if you're left alone, it's like, thank God I'm alone. I can do whatever I want. And then after a while, you're like, damn, it's pretty lonely though.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go and make friends. And maybe I don't want to do my own thing as much now because I just did it for a while. And then you go make friends and you become agreeable in social situations. And then after a while, you're like, you feel this pull to like go and do your own thing. And when you finally get that chance, it feels like, oh, thank God I'm alone again. I can just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the more you stay in that part, the more you might think like, well, it's kind of lonely. I can do whatever I want and I'm doing whatever I want. But is that really what it's all about? Maybe
Mm.
not all the time.
I think there's different seasons that we go through. That's what I've
Yeah.
noticed in my journey because there was a time where I really wanted to collaborate with and I had all these ideas, but the reality was not everyone met me where it was aligned. And like,
Mm.
you know, dealt with a lot of things. Just in terms of my self-worth and value and just like feeling a part of a community. That's always been a huge thing for me. And I've never felt like um I've you know how some people are just like they know their people, they know their community, and it's like just a thing. For me, it's been like I've had a hard time fitting in. Like this is the paradox. I know how to adapt myself to be a part of communities. Like I
Mm.
can very well integrate, but I always just feel like it doesn't last. So what I got from that is that I need to create my own community and like connect with more people who are aligned on my level rather than inserting myself into someone else's, if that makes sense. But anyway, so like why I brought that up was because like there was a point where because I was just being I felt disappointed a lot with my inability to fully express myself in environments with other people. There was always like a cap at which I could express myself. Um, so I had to put a lot of boundaries around my creative process and my gifts and like myself
Mm.
because I was a part of what people were doing because I was convenient and like I was just around.
Mm.
Um, you know, I sing, so like if you're in a studio and people know you sing, they need vocals. They're just gonna be like, "Yo, can you please can you lay these vocals down for me?" And uh, at that time, I just felt like I was a side character in other
Mm.
people's journey. So I had to like it got to a point where people would ask me when I was in the studio to do vocals or like lay something down for them. And I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Like literally I had to like use my voice and speak up and set boundaries around it. And like even on the internet, like I would post certain things with music and people would rush to try to collaborate with me, but they're doing it for their own selfish reasons. And that's not to say like we can't collaborate with people or reach out to people if we are inspired or we resonate with them. It's just like there was still this friction of like they're using me for their own benefit, not seeing like who I actually am and the gift that I am. So like I had to rewire myself in that process. So like it's been a lot of isolation and me going through my own creative process. And like at times I was like, I don't want to collaborate with people and do this all myself. It's just the amount of resentment I had for people. And it builds up. But that's not healthy. Like we have to balance. I feel like the place that I'm in right now, I'm a lot more receptive because I've also built a stronger identity, and the way I view myself is a lot stronger and more fertile and more loving, and like I can be more creative. So like, you know, I'm open to collaborating with people, but it's with the right people who are aligned, you know? So that's why I'm
Yeah, you
excited to
just get more and
collaborate with
more.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, you just get more and more refined on what you want and what kinds of things you're open to, because you only have a certain amount of artistic energy, and if you don't really know what you want to do yet, then yeah, you'd be down to try a whole bunch of things. And the more and more you figure out actually what you want to do, the more selective you become. You're like, no, that's not it. I gotta save my
Yeah.
energy for like the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the chat. This has been really cool
Yeah, it's
to
been
explore
cool.
these things and learn a bit more about you too.
Yeah. I think it's like fun to have conversation with other creative people and then like give it to the world, and like through what we talk about and our exchange of ideas and information, people can have their own realizations, you know? That's kind of why I want to do this. But also like to amplify you and your gift. You know, I think that's really important because sometimes we just need more creative and intentional creatives to be seen and to be given a space to share themselves, you know? So I'm very grateful that you are on here and willing to be seen and show yourself and like share who you are with people.
Yeah, beautiful. It is a vibe. It's good. So thanks for hosting this convo.
No problem. Thank you for being here. All
Thank
right.
you. I'm gonna go to a little arts and crafts gathering.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I'm gonna do some coding though. But don't tell anyone. I'm gonna be coding an app.
Nice.